What's good? What's good, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Urban Platform Speaks. Make sure to like and subscribe as you tune into the channel. Check out the content. And with that being said, man, I was going to do a video before I even heard what was that show? Gil's Arenas and Brandon Jennings said he compared Dennis Rodman to Draymond Green, right? And so I was going to do a video earlier anyway about Michael Jordan and how Dennis Rodman was like I think one of the best teammates that Michael Jordan ever had because he fit what he brought to the table what Mike needed and what Mike made it so that Mike didn't have to really focus on other things beside what Mike specialized in, right? And so Brandon Jennings was saying that he compared Dennis Rodman to Draymond Green. And in his opinion, he thinks that Draymond Green was better, right? And so I'm not even going to go down that route because I don't think that like to compare different eras. I think is you don't is not necessary. Number one, and it's hard to do because like they're not the same. Like this era is not as physical as the era that Dennis Rodman played in, right? And so, but I won't say that like Dennis Rodman couldn't play in this era and or Draymond Green couldn't play when Dennis Rodman played, right? Because that wouldn't be wise either. People adapt to whatever their environment is, right? So, for instance, whatever player Draymond Green needed to be to play back in those for Golden State back in the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, whatever era you want to put him in. I think Draymond Green had the talent and he would have been able to do that. Because like I said, people, if it's more physical, then Draymond Green would have been physical. I think Dennis Rodman would be able to play today because how intelligent Dennis Rodman was. Um, and like I said, people adapt to their environment. So I'm not even going to compare and say who was better and you know than the other, what person was better than the other person, right? But I do want to say, man, about Dennis Rodman, man, this guy Dennis Rodman, man, was something special for real. When you think about like Dennis Rodman, his like I haven't seen anybody like Dennis Rodman before or since Dennis Rodman. Like Dennis Rodman just basically all he wanted to do is rebound. He wanted to rebound and play defense, right? That's all he did. And then he did it at a time where you had Charles Oakley in the league, you had Lonzo Mourning, you had you had a lot of bad dudes in the league. And then Dennis Rodman, you had Charles Barkley, Karl Malone, even like early in his career, Kareem was still in the league, Dave Robinson, Hakeem Olajuwon, and this guy still stood out. He still stood out for rebounding and defense, right? Like, and you had over the years, man, I have seen a lot of great defenders, but nobody like this guy, like Dennis Rodman. Nobody. Like he wasn't concerned about scoring or shooting at all. He just want to get that rebound and hand it to, and hand it off to whoever the point guard, whether it was Mike or whether it was Isaiah, or he played for the Spurs. It might have been Tony Parker, or was it Tony Parker or what's the other little guard? Johnson, Avery Johnson. It might have been Avery at that time. I'm not sure if Tony Parker was there. It might have been Tony Parker too, right? But that was his claim to fame. Like this guy really, Dennis Rodman, did it against some bad dudes. And so, like I said, I'm not going to draw a comparison to and say that that Draymond Green was better or that he was better than Draymond Green. But I will say that nobody did it like like Dennis Rodman did it. You know what I mean? Like, and those years when Dennis was with Chicago, man, and I mean, he was a difference maker for real. He definitely was a difference maker. And I think Dennis Rodman, in my opinion, was probably more important to Mike's career than Charles Oakley, right? I remember like early in my career, Charles Oakley was very important, right? He was like the enforcer. Like you couldn't really he was the enforcer. He just kept people from, you couldn't press Mike like that because Charles would step up and he would he was the enforcer. Now, Dennis Rodman was crazy. He just was crazy, man. And so he was around with a lot. It was a lot of bad dudes around. And so if you know anything about like even bad dudes don't mess with crazy dudes. They don't want if they don't really have to mess with the crazy dude unless it's absolutely necessary. But for the most part, they leave the crazy guys, even the tough dudes, the bad dudes, they leave the crazy guys alone. And that's what Dennis Rodman was, man. He was a crazy guy, man. And he just wanted to rebound and play defense. Every once in a while, if you left Dennis Rodman open, he will hit a jumper, a 3-pointer, and then give you the fist pump. Dennis, and on top of that, he don't even get enough credit for how intelligent of a basketball player he was, man. It wasn't all physical abilities. Because if you look at it, I think Dennis Rodman's only like 6'7", he might have been 6'8", but for the most, I think he's 6'7". And he playing defensive guys against guys like Hakeem Olajuwon. He played defense against Shaquille O'Neal. I mean, 7-foot guys, first ballot Hall of Famers. Here he is rebounding over Charles Barkley. And Charles Barkley was a beast, man. So this guy, he played against Karl Malone. And his approach to the game was not just physical, but it was also mental. He thought the game out, man. And like I said, I like watching Draymond Green, and because Draymond Green in this era, um, he do exactly for the Golden State Warriors and Steph Curry. He give them exactly what they needed in order to get those 4 championships, right? Some people say he might have cost them another championship, but he got him 4. You know what I mean? He participated in 4. He did enough to help them get 4 championships. If he cost them 1, I don't, then they probably can live with that. But these kind of guys, man, these guys who just focus on, they just do their job, man. Ain't nobody like Dennis Rodman. Nobody like Dennis Rodman, man. You looking at this dude just jump around and rebound and like he just made Mike's job so much easier because you couldn't really focus on Mike because of Dennis Rodman's antics, man. He was just flagrant, over the top, with the hair and diving out of bounds and getting in the head of, like, I remember when they played against Karl Malone, man. He just got in Karl Malone's head and disrupted Karl Malone's game, man. He did the same thing with Alonzo Mourning. He did the same thing with Shaq. Like, man, nobody like Dennis Rodman, man. And I mean, just was an intelligent ball player. Nobody like that. So I'm not going to sit up here and compare the guy, what's his name, Draymond Green, to you know, Draymond Green to Dennis Rodman. I just think Dennis Rodman was just in a space all his own. And maybe later on, people will say the same thing about Draymond Green, right? Like Draymond Green brought something to the table. Like I said, what Steph needed, because of the style of play. It was a more wide open style of play, and they could get away with playing small ball with Draymond Green, because I think Draymond Green probably about 6'5", 6'6". He's not as tall as Dennis Rodman, and Dennis Rodman even was not, let me see, Mike Jordan's 6'6", so Dennis Rodman had to be about 6'8". He probably about 2 inches taller than Mike, so, and 6'8" for somebody that's going up against some like centers and power forwards like Karl Malone. Karl Malone was 6'9" and was basically bigger than Karl Malone was bigger than LeBron James, as far as like bulkiness, right? So and he was a handful. Dennis Rodman just was a special dude. So, and for his time, he was a bad dude. I don't think that, people don't really give Dennis Rodman as much credit as as I think he deserved. And so I and what I like I said though, Draymond Green a bad dude. Yeah, and you can't deny that. Him and Steph got 4 championship rings. Draymond, Steph, and Clay got 4 rings. Right. And I don't think Steph Curry will have no complaints about, about Draymond Green, which he shouldn't. You won 4 rings with this guy. So, and I think Dre probably, a lot of people say he couldn't have played back in the 90s, but my pushback on that is the fact that people adapt to their environments. So I can't say that Draymond wouldn't have been able to play. He probably would have had to play a different style. Just like if Dennis Rodman was playing today, he would just have to play a different style. And I just think that both of these guys are intelligent enough to and physically talented enough where as though they'll be able to adapt. So I'm not, I'm just not going to be in the business of comparing this era to that era when I think that players, people just adapt to whatever their environment is. So that's my take on it. I think both of these guys are really exceptional at what they do. But ain't nobody, I've never seen anybody like Dennis Rodman before Dennis Rodman or Dennis Rodman after Dennis Rodman. So that's my take on it. Make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Also, don't forget to leave a comment. And with that being said, man, I'll check y'all out in the next video. Peace.